welcome back everybody to another episode of the Lady Leaders series. We are excited because we've had this guest, I think, Ashlee, two or three or four times now. I can't remember. And I will say, I feel as if hygiene and anything with hygiene is always a big hit, but especially Rachel, having your expertise is a big hit. So thank you for coming back and giving your
Thank
time
you.
again. We really, really appreciate it. I know for a fact people go back and listen to these. So thank you so
Yeah.
much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Always,
Yeah,
always happy to do it.
for sure. Well, first off, I can't imagine there aren't people who know who you are, but just real quick, give people, some of your background.
Sure. So I'm Rachel Wall. I'm the founder of a company called Inspired Hygiene, and we work with dental teams to help elevate the hygiene services, hygiene systems. I just added this mindset, elevate hygiene mindset, and profitability as well. And those are super critical things always, but man, especially the last few years and kind of where we are now. And we're going to talk about some of those challenges today. But we are a 20-year coaching consulting firm, and just check us out. And one cool thing I will share is this year we started a podcast. So if you go to inspiredhygiene.com/podcast, you'll be able to see our episodes there, or just find us on any podcast platform, most of the popular podcast platforms. And we just kind of started right off the bat with our podcast and some of these hot topics too. So if you want to learn more, that's a great resource.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Probably much needed. So congratulations. That's a huge
Thank you.
endeavor. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's going well. I'm enjoying it.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Well, you already touched on it, and that is, a lot of times I create the agendas and, what the topics are going to be based on a lot of the coaching calls that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one that I feel like in a post-COVID era, it's just not going away.
Yeah.
And that is that so many doctors are struggling with hiring these high-value hygienists that actually still really enjoy patient care, are enthusiastic about patient care. They still want to learn, they still want to have impact. I'm finding I'm hearing like, yes, there's a shortage, but even the ones that I can find, they don't seem to have that fire anymore to take care of
Mm-hmm.
patients. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you tell offices? Because I'm certain you've heard it too. What do you tell offices that seem to be struggling with that? And what kind of mindset that you said, what kind of mindset should they have during that struggle?
Yeah. Yeah. It absolutely is. It's a different time, right, than it was pre-COVID. And I mean, that's an understatement in so many different ways. So I will share what we share with our clients is like anything in dentistry or in life in general, it's not one thing, right? It's a lot of different things working together to get you where you want to go. So I would say a few different things is first start off thinking about this hiring process and where you are looking for candidates. So, gone are the days where you can just throw up your hygiene ad on Indeed and expect to get, four or five different, candidates. It's just not the way it is now. And so I would say really craft um, marketing for team members as carefully as you do for patients. We've talked about this before. And look at things like your social media. Do you have individuals on your team that really love working in your practice and would do a 30-second video that you can put up on social media? Let your patients know that you're looking, because you never know when they might have a niece or a nephew or someone that's moving to the town, or is interested in it and is a hygienist. We've actually had that happen with some of our clients when they put it out on social media. Things happen like that. Start nurturing relationships in your community, in your dental community. I just saw today. I don't know if it was Dr. Colleen or if it was somebody else talking about how they're doing like a CE event, CE and dinner event, and
Mhm.
attracting hygienists, because you're going to pull them in with food, you're going to pull them in with CE, but look at those that are raising their hand to answer questions or ask questions or are really engaged. Like, those are the people that you're looking for. And so I would just say, in order to have higher level candidates, uh, brainstorm higher level attraction ideas, higher level attraction methods,
Mhm.
so that you're really targeting that. Now, sometimes that's easier said than done. And again, like I said, it's not necessarily a magic bullet, but I would also say, when you're going into these interviews, I think a lot of times dentists have, we used to have all of these hoops that candidates would have to jump through because there were so many that you could say, hey, send me an email with this subject line. And if they didn't, then, they didn't get an interview. But so I think a lot of dental teams are not being as selective because they need a warm body in the chair. But I would encourage you to just still consider your core values, consider what your practice is about, and ask this individual some questions to see where they are in terms of that. Like, tell me the last time that you did something that was out of your comfort zone, personally or professionally. And just see what they say.
Mhm. Oh, I love all of that. I have more to add to that too, but Ashlee,
Please.
no, I'm saying I just love everything you said. But Ashlee, hearing that, and you hire a lot of people, whether it be for DSN or your own GSD Queen stuff, you know, it's the same everywhere. What if that resonates or any other ideas you have along with what Rachel's saying?
No, I think that's spot on. You really made me laugh when you were like, remember when you used to put in the if you don't have the subject line, you get denied. Yeah, that like
Yeah.
doesn't matter anymore,
Yeah.
really. Like because we're just trying to get a warm body in the door, which is hard, right? But I think something too is it's about even communication when you get that warm body in the door when you're doing your interviews, and it's about talking about not just, um the questions for them, but explaining your goals as a department, as the
Yes.
hygiene department. It's about having them understand the why behind, and it maybe be you use this all the time, Dr. Kassmel, is the we're not the right fit for everyone because here's what we do. But the people who stay, like, man, we're tight and we love it. And when you explain your culture, when you explain what your goals are with the organization, maybe with the hygiene department or whatever department you're hiring into, and explain those goals, then you can start to get them on board, and you're setting those expectations from the beginning instead of um, just like, oh, thank goodness this is a qualified person, I'm hiring them. You do have to still use that interview process to kind of set the expectations, and that's where you start training even a little bit. That's where your
Yeah.
training comes in a little bit too. So
Oh,
And
oh,
yeah,
all of
I,
that. Yes.
I love that too. And asking questions about that once you're going through those core values, like, so which of those core values do you identify with the most? And
Yeah.
then can they even say back what the core value is? What excites you about this particular core value? And so can they respond to that? It's like, I don't know, it just sounds nice. Like that, you're looking for something a little bit more. I would say the other thing I would say is I've noticed that still some dental practice owners and practice managers are not open to having flexible scheduling. So they might find somebody fantastic that's only available 2 days a week. And so they kind of look over them and I'm like, don't do that. Come back, circle back with that person. You never know what that could develop into.
Yeah. I I agree with everything you ladies said. And if I could give you a big hug, I would, because I'm like, I agree. I think the first thing that I'm like, I do want to stress again is you can't do what everybody's doing and expect a different caliber of candidate
Exactly.
to apply. You can't.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree with you more. Like, I mean, I know, Ash, we've done a lot of hiring and interviewing webinars. So if you're looking at what do better or excuse me, better ads sound like, what are better things to do? We have those webinars, but Rachel, that's what we've said is I joke, like I used to try to make my ad to where I would catch as many fish maybe as possible. And I've now done the opposite.
Mm.
I want to catch just this kind of fish that really are magnetized by that ad and
Hmm.
it speaks to who that person is. And those are the ones who
Yeah.
tend to apply. Now, I'm not I'm not disagreeing that I'm not here to say, boy, we have just so many hygienists applying.
Yeah.
We don't. We've had to come up with some really crazy strategies to try to make it work, including the last part you said, which is making it work with certain people who might otherwise I would have said, no, 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 they can't do exactly 4 days a week,
Yeah.
exactly those things. We've had to kind of piecemeal sometimes what's going to make sense based on, a great hygienist who can maybe do just those 2 days.
Yeah.
And I think so much of what you said, Ashlee, is so spot on. I think we have to do things differently. we have to interview with way more intention. And I think when we're desperate, we often want to do the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
We want to tap dance to make them happy and say yes. And then we immediately put ourselves on our back foot. They come in, and we've got this weird power dynamic where the
Mm,
hygienist was told no expectation. So they came in just thinking they're going to do what they want to do.
yeah.
And the doctor and team are instantly frustrated by, don't they know? And so, you know, Ashlee, you alluded to this, but like how we interview them is really so important. Like setting to some degree, like you said, it's almost a little bit of onboarding before they even get started. Um, I just think all of that is so important. If we can change that mindset as doctors, that, you know, the current situation we're in is what we're in. There's no sense in hoping it to be different. We're all just going to have to figure out how to do the best we can with what we have. And those are some strategies of elevating our ads, elevating where we're placing them, being more strategic about how we're reaching out to them. I love the social media idea of, do we have great team members who want to talk about us? I think just coming up with different ways to attract the people we want and then interviewing them different as well without tap dancing, making them happy, negating, but really listening to what are the things that motivate them, what makes
Mm-hmm.
them want to be in an office, and
Yeah.
making sure, are we aligned? Are we both aligned with that? Is that something we can offer as well? Um, well, and I think that brings me to the second point, which is, you know, doctors do find, whether it be the current office, you know, hygienists that they have in their office or ones they're trying to hire, they feel so concerned with asking hygienists to do anything more than the bare minimum
Mm-hmm.
basics. And so we're seeing, and I know I see a lot of doctor numbers, payroll, things like that. We're seeing a lot of offices struggling with getting their hygienist. I mean, I've seen 1.2 times their pay, two
Yeah.
times their pay. They're just struggling because
Yeah.
they're scared to ask them to do anything differently. They're scared to talk about money. So, you know, Rachel, how do doctors start this conversation if they've got a group of hygienists working with them that perhaps they are worried about, we're just doing the basics and they're
Yeah.
scared to say anything more?
Yeah. I think if you have core values, going back to those, just saying, hey, it's been a while since we have really looked at our core values and made sure that we are fulfilling and living into those core values every day. Personally, from a clinical standpoint, from a just customer service standpoint, whatever it might be. So let's take a look at that. And doctors can use specific examples if they've seen a patient. And I'll tell you a couple scenarios where this comes up is maybe they've had a change. They had a hygienist that left, and then somebody new came in, and they're recognizing that these patients have undiagnosed periodontal disease. We see that happening. We see maybe a hygienist has to go out for unexpected medical leave, and the other hygienist take over, and they recognize, oh, wow. Or it could just be happening across the board, and you've got three hygienists that have been there for a while, and a new hygienist comes in, and all of a sudden they're identifying more periodontal therapy, and it's making it a little awkward for everybody else. But, all of those things are a good reason to just say, hey, let's all get on the same page again. And let's look at our core values, let's look at our clinical practices, and let's all get on the same page. If you have a hygiene handbook, pull it out. Like, is this still current and modern? If you don't, we have on our website on inspiredhygiene.com under free, I think it's called free resources. We have a standard of care worksheet. This is a huge way to really work with your team and say, hey, I just want to make sure that we all are all in agreement with how frequently we're doing a full perio chart, when we move a patient in from a prophy into active therapy, and let's just work through this and let's talk through it and get it in writing, because a lot of times the hygienists are frustrated too. They just don't know how to bring it up, or some of the hygienists are frustrated because there's another hygienist that's not really pulling their weight in regards to the diagnostic piece. So remember too that doctors and hygienists are responsible for the level of care in the practice. So if a patient goes somewhere else and says, oh my gosh, and they come back and say, you never told me I had periodontal disease, and I've been having, adult prophies for 5 years, and now I have this irreversible periodontal disease, and you're reported to the board. I mean, is that are you willing to risk that? Because that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you absolutely more on that. Um, and I hear this often too, this whole conversation of like, how do I even bring it up? So I find that doctors almost do nothing because they're
Yeah.
scared to do anything.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, that's never going to change the
Yeah.
situation. And I'm exactly like you, where I say, my biggest concern is always for the health of the patient
Yes.
and the liability that you're now assuming because you're too
Yep.
scared to have these conversations.
Yep.
And so this is a huge liability on the practice's shoulders, but more than anything, if that was your mother sitting in the chair, we've been dishonest. And that's what freaks me out. Is I always say, like, this is a time just to be able. I couldn't agree with you more. And Ashley, you've heard me say this a million times, but like, I always step into these situations with saying, hey guys, you know what? I've let you down. As a doctor, I'll say,
Yeah.
guys, I've let you down. I have noticed that I have let the standard fall here when it came to the perio protocol, and I take responsibility for that. So I'm going to need your help. I went back, I pulled it back out of what our perio protocol was, and what I
Yeah.
found is, if I'm honest, guys, this maybe isn't up to the AAP standards or whatever standard. I love,
Mhm.
please go to her website and use her sheet to figure out, perio standards. But I always just say, hey, I take the responsibility for this, and moving forward, I can't unsee what I'm seeing,
Yeah.
and I need your help to fix it. Because my feeling is I want to disarm any sense of the need for
It's your
them to,
fault.
yeah,
Yeah.
for them to
Yeah.
defend themselves. Because ultimately, as the dentist, I can walk into those rooms and I can navigate this any way I want.
Yeah.
So I always tell doctors, I found this to be the most successful, and it disarms the hygienist, and they actually go, you know what? Yes, thank you, we're with you.
Yeah.
Versus, well, if I go in pointing fingers, I spend way too much time on damage control when really all I
Mhm.
want to do is
Mhm.
solve the problem.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's
That's
always been my
brilliant.
approach.
Yeah,
So
that's a brilliant approach, is just kind of falling on the sword because, like you said, ultimately it is your responsibility. And hygienists are liable too. I mean, we have professional ethical responsibilities, and it's not okay. It is never okay for a hygienist to refuse to follow a standard of care that is within a reasonable ethical limits. Now, if you're asking them to do something that's not ethical, that we're assuming that's not happening. But if it is, hey, I'm expecting you to do a 6-point probing and record all of these points of diagnostic data at least once a year on every one of these patients, and please start it with a blank perio chart. It's not okay for a hygienist to say, I'm not going to do that. That's unacceptable.
mhm.
And I don't think that's as common. I was just talking with a colleague. I think where we are right now is, I think 20% of the hygienists are creating 80% of the I'm going to say, like, tornadoes on social media. I think 20% of the hygienists are creating 80% of the incredible life-changing clinical results out there. And I think the other 60% are kind of in the middle, waiting for their doctor to activate them into something. Or they're just like, I'm doing the best I can, but they've got a lot of obstacles in their way, or they're just not sure how to get to the next level. I think that's where we are. I think most of them are reasonable. And if they're not, then that's a whole nother conversation.
Yep, which we may be getting to,
Yeah.
but I agree. I agree with you. And actually, I feel like Ashley, we had my two lead hygienists on maybe a couple months ago to say, like, they're on, like, tell us what's on those social media things. And I'm not saying verbatim, but like, we came to the same conclusion, I think, Ashley, which was, it's a very small percentage
Yeah.
that are potentially the most vocal. The majority of hygienists, there is still a huge group that they want to have patient impact. They
Yeah.
may just be sitting in stationary land waiting for guidance.
Right.
And so if it's time to start that conversation, right, Ashley? Wasn't that the
Yeah,
spirit?
absolutely. Yeah, that's what they were like. It's not that everyone feels this way. It's just that they're the loudest, like
Mm-hmm.
many things in our climate at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
life is weird at the moment.
Yeah.
I also want to touch on too the you mentioned, as the doc, you falling on your sword, like just the impact that has on everyone then taking ownership. Where it's like, oh, if the doc is doing that, oh, then well, then I can, then I can take my part if they're doing, it just automatically just brings down that sense of defensiveness, like you mentioned. So I just wanted to highlight that again because, oh, so helpful.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
and doctors always tell me though, isn't it going to make me look weak and I'm like, no, being able to take accountability always makes people look so trusted and I respect them so much
Mhm.
when they could do that. And that's where I'm like, it just comes so easily now because I care more about, I don't care about being right. I care about being effective. So I'm
Mhm.
like, that's all I want to get to is how to be effective in all these situations.
Mhm.
So, once we broach those subjects, Rachel, you were kind of alluding to this. So a doctors, they do that. They fall on the sword. They say, guys, I've let the standard go down. This is the peri protocol. This is how I'm going to need your help. This is what it's going to look like. You know, what do you say to doctors if they're getting lukewarm responses from hygienists about this potential
Mhm.
upgrade? How do they sometimes start this momentum, ball? I say, like, it feels like
Mhm.
doctors are like really in this uphill battle with some hygienists. And you alluded, there's things that ethically they're responsible for doing and things they're not. But what do you suggest they do with this kind of situation?
So I think this could go a couple different ways. So let's say the doctor has this conversation and then she decides to download our standard of care and like fill it out and then just kind of present it to the team. This is really what I feel like we need to be doing. Uh, there's better buy-in when you do that as a collaborative environment. So you say, hey, here's what I'd like to do is let's carve out, an hour over the next, for an hour a week over the next 4 weeks, and let's work through each section of the standard of care, or let's work through our existing standard of care and see what are we actually doing and where do we need to really step up in that way. The other thing I would say is make sure you have credible resources to back you up. So the AAP's website is great. I'm a dental nerd. I buy dental textbooks. That's one of the resources that we use. Maybe you look to a resource like Inspired Hygiene because we use credible sources. But just have something that you can back up whatever that standard is that you're hoping for. If it is, hey, we need to start some type of periodontal therapy when a patient presents with bleeding and bone loss and 4 millimeter pocket depths or deeper, like point to the AAP staging and grading. Like this is this is periodontal disease and this is when we need to start treatment. Like point to something credible, not just you and your opinion. And then do it in a collaborative way, right? So when you put that standard together, say, does everybody feel like this is reasonable?
Mhm.
And what is getting in our way of accomplishing this now? And just please be, and just tell the team, like, please be open, say whatever you need to say, because it might be, you know what, I want to do this, but in the past, we've had a couple patients and you've come in and said, you know what, just clean their
Mhm.
teeth today and we'll check it the next time. And that, and they will just shut down. They just, they remember that. It might be, well, I'd love to do that, but, um, the something I'm like there's some a technology problem with the perio chart. It's so interesting how many times we go in and we find the doctor's frustrated that the team's not taking intro photos and we find that it's actually a IT problem.
Mhm.
And it's a simple fix, but no one's really gotten to the bottom of what the problem is. And so I would just say, give yourself time to work through it and just to let your team have time to have discussion around it. It could be, okay, we've kind of we've kind of overlooked this for a while. So how are we going to now approach patients that we've been seeing for a while? And that
Mhm.
we know that they have periodontal disease, but we just haven't presented that to them. How are we going to work through that? So just allow them to kind of share what maybe their concerns are, what obstacles they see, what they're looking forward to from having this common standard of care, and then just start applying it. Like get in your schedule, have them, they know who those patients are. Like look next week, who are the patients that you think are going to fall into this category, and let's kind of prepare for how we're going to present this to them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Ashlee, do you have anything to add at this point with when we get the lukewarm responses? Anything you have to add to this at this point?
I just really like that you touched on the technology piece, because sometimes people aren't doing their job because they don't have the resources they need to do it
Yes.
correctly.
Yes.
And it's such a simple fix, and it can be, um, yeah, I just have to highlight that piece again, because I think that that's such an important, uh, just thing to consider. Like it just makes a difference. So sorry, I don't think that answered your question, but I
Yeah,
wanted to
no, that's
highlight
great.
that again.
Great. Well, everybody hears something different that actually it's like, man, that really does resonate with conversations that they've had too. And the thing I can say to that is, I think the things that I know I've done really wrong when I've come and maybe I've even said, hey guys, this is me, it's on me. I'm excited to improve the standard. Here's what it's going to look like. I would get blank stares. And my response to those maybe blank stares, or maybe I didn't get a yay,
Mm-hmm.
you're so great, doctor, this is incredible. I would actually somehow internalize that as they disagree. They don't think that,
Mm,
I would project whatever my insecurity was on that
Mm-hmm.
moment instead of going, hey, I can see this is taking just a minute for you guys to digest. Or I bet you guys are thinking so many things right now. And I get that. We're going to start really slow.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is, say, do we just all agree and are we all convicted to the same level about what we're seeing? Take this home, think through it. Let's meet next week.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we don't do anything different quite yet. Because what I have found is, if you're more of a quick start, you accept things quickly, you want to change fast. This is all like, yeah, let's do it. But there's a lot of people who their mindset is more, I want to internalize this. I need to think through it. I'm not going to
Yes.
probably say anything until I understand.
Yes.
I need to give them more time. So sometimes when I'm getting a lukewarm response, I've had to say, this has nothing to do with what I just said and everything that they might be thinking in their minds that I can't interpret right now.
Mm-hmm.
So giving them that freedom to say, I'm going to need a little time to think this through.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we'll come back and revisit it in a few days or whatever and start figuring out what are the next pieces. But the worst thing I can tell you guys I did is project what I'm thinking they're thinking onto them
yes.
Mm-hmm.
and then try to just keep going.
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
they don't
Yeah.
like this, so you know what I'm
Just
going
keep
to do?
hammering.
I'm going to keep going. Yep. Let me just keep convincing you of why this is great. When really they're
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm up to here already,
Yeah. Give me a minute.
And
Yeah.
yeah. And so I would say when I get lukewarm responses, sometimes I just need to give them a moment if this is a bigger change for them. Because if I start going into a vindication mode of, and this is the reason, and it's not about, I've already lost them. And it
Mm,
puts me in this weird position of feeling like I'm vindicating my conviction when really they just need time to digest. So that's how I know what I've done personally really wrong is come out too hot, too strong, assuming they're thinking something. Um, and I think now what I've recognized is, and I think you alluded to this, is give them time to digest and set up a succession of meetings. And I say, this is not a one and done thing, guys. Don't worry. Like, I'm going to need time to do this too, to make this a new habit. So together, we're going to meet weekly at
Mm-hmm.
lunch on Thursdays. And I agree with you, Rachel. I always say, I want you to tell me everything that's getting in your way of being
Mm-hmm.
able to do this. I can't wait to hear. And if it's me, go ahead and put me as number one.
Yeah.
It was you, Dr. K. You negated what I said.
Yeah.
It's okay. I need to hear this because, guys, I care once again, I care more about being effective than I do about being right.
Yeah.
And so I want you guys to come back to me next week and tell me absolutely everything that got in your way of keeping this consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are so right, Ashlee. I have heard, I think I need to buy a new IO camera, but I didn't want to say that because it's going to cost, I know, a couple $100 or whatever. Or if I'm really honest, my foot pedal hasn't worked or whatever, my perioprobe thing hasn't
Yeah.
worked for 2 months and I didn't want to tell you because they're embarrassed sometimes. And so if I make it really like, guys, I know stuff is getting in the way. It's okay. I just want to hear it all. And week by
Mm-hmm.
week, we're going to slowly dial it in. It's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be quick. It's not going to be fast. It's going to be incremental. And I'm going to walk alongside you guys with this because I got to learn the new habit too.
Yeah.
Anything with that though, have you guys ever done that where you're reading the room wrong and you start putting in what you guys think somebody's thinking, or maybe that's
Oh,
maybe that's
yeah.
no, yeah, go ahead, Rachel. I was gonna
Go
let
ahead,
you
Ashlee.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, that's like such a reactive thing, right? Like you start, that's such a skill too, to notice that point where you're like triggered, right? You're like, oh my gosh, they're not reacting, they're not having the response that I want. There's this exercise I learned, it's called TFO, it's thoughts, feelings, outcomes. So the thought is, oh my gosh, they're not understanding it, they're not getting this, they're just pushing back on me. So the feeling is I'm frustrated, I'm, more aggravated, I feel, angry, and the outcome is then I'm pushing them harder, and it's not, it's not going to have the effect I want, or I'm
Mhm.
just going to assume, oh, they just don't get it, oh, they don't understand me, and then it can spiral so quickly, and you have to, this is like fluffy stuff. We talk about like the woo. We've done some woo woo webinar summer, but it's like the deep work. You have to work on yourself a little bit to notice these things so that you can lead better. And so if you can flip that and you can allow them if it's, what if those things weren't true, and you just flipped it, what if it's just they're confused, they just need space, it's not about you, then the outcome is they have more, you have a team who's on your side and they feel heard too. So anyway, yeah, sometimes you have to do
TFO.
that those little deep work tricks on yourself to be able to lead better.
Yeah. Got to
And
ninja your own mind first.
Yep.
yeah, and they're doing the same thing. Like in my
Yep.
experience, when we go in and coach teams, so we help facilitate all of this for teams so that they're not going through it alone and kind of feeling around blind, right? But what I've experienced is the hygienists and many of the team members are doing their own deep work while you're up there talking. All these things are going through their mind, and so sometimes hygienists get labeled as resistant when they just need more information and they need some time to process. There's a really good Harvard Business Review article about change, why change is hard, or change in teams. I'll have to find it. But it lists like 10 different reasons. And one of it is, I mean, they all apply to dentistry specifically. And this example specifically of like loss of face, meaning like, oh my gosh, what about all the patients that I haven't presented periodotherapy to? And if I do it now, what are they going to say? This is going to create more work for me, and I'm already having a hard time staying on time. I mean, was I wrong? Like, oh my gosh, I totally have flaked on this. Like all of these things are going through their head. That also going through their head is, yeah, next we're going to have a conversation about production. So that's also going through their head. So that's where pulling in these credible resources, we're really like establishing the why. Why is this in the patient's best interest? How can it actually save the hygienist time to identify disease rather than trying to address it in a prophy or a perio maintenance? And then, yes, there is going to be a win for the practice as well. But I think all of those things I think um, it's a harder change to implement than you may at first expect.
Yeah, I agree. I think people often, when I'm coaching and we see hygiene is at certain things, numbers, well, the first thing I tell people, if I see an underproducing hygiene team, I never go to the hygienist first. I actually, the very first thing I go to is unfilled time units. How
Mm,
many unfilled time units are there per week per hygienist?
yep.
Because right there, that could be part of it.
Yeah.
And so, do we have actually, what are our protocols around unfilled time units, and how are they filling them? Because if a hygienist doesn't have a patient in their chair, obviously that's going to corrode any chance they have of
Yep.
getting to the times pay. Then the next thing I look at is actually, do we have a perio protocol?
Hmm.
What does it look like? Is it consistent? And doctor, do you know it like
Yep.
the back of your hand that you walk in and can say it?
Yep.
But I think a lot of times we go to a really prescriptive measure of it's the humans themselves, and I think that's where we get in trouble. I always am like, when I see potentially an underproducing group of hygienists, I'm always going to say there's so many things that go into this, and every one of them we're going to have to just kind of see what we need to tweak to get better, including unfilled time units, including, okay, the perio protocol. So I think to your point, I tell doctors this is going to be at least 3 months of our work.
Oh
This
yeah.
little action item
Yep.
is always going to be moved down to the next time we chat, because changing a hygiene department to becoming more productive there's lots of different little pieces to it. The individuals are part of it, but they're actually not as much as people think. Like I said, I will never point the fingers at the people. I'll always figure out what's all getting in the way of them being able to be productive hygienists. Now, that being said, that leads me to the next question. I know people are like, well, then what do you tolerate? What don't you tolerate? You
Mhm.
know, if it's never the person, and I'm like, no, I'm not, don't take that to the nth
Yeah.
degree. But I think if we've done all of this background work, we've set up a true clarity around what does our hygiene department look like? What does the perio protocol little flow sheet look like?
Mhm.
Do they know the codes? Do they know how to treatment plan it? Have we practiced the verbiage with them of what to say? Have we set up meetings?
Yeah.
If we've done all of what it takes, and then we're still getting pushback in regards to some of the things that I'm going to let you talk about, Rachel, then what? Then what do we do?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, when do we know what to push on and when not to push
Mhm.
things?
Um, I think it's hard for me to say like black and white this. I mean, the very obvious things are if you've given them all the tools, if you've given them the opportunity to give feedback on the standard of care, if they've agreed that yes, this standard of care is reasonable and it is still not being implemented, that you're seeing patients that have bleeding and have bone loss and they're not going into the appropriate care, then I suggest that you have if it's the whole hygiene department, then have a conversation with the whole hygiene department. If it's one or two people, have a conversation with them individually and just find out, say, hey, so we've done a lot of work on this. And what I've noticed is that there's just there's been no change in the amount of periodontal diagnosis that's coming out of your patient base. And I recognize that you know um that we've done a lot in the last few months, but I would just love to know, like, where do you feel like the gap is? Where do you feel like you need some additional support to really implement this? Because I do feel like there are patients in your chair that have active disease, and be ready with a couple examples and like, can we walk through those together? Maybe they're just not comfortable reading x-rays. Where are you? Is this clear to you that there's bone loss here? And I would do that in as calm of a tone as you can, that I'm just here to help you, let's work together on this and see what the response is. Again, you're going to have the one-off hygienist that says, I just don't really believe that there's periodontal disease. You're never going to change that. That is not going to be a fit for your practice.
Mhm.
That's not something that you can tolerate. And I've heard that before. But if it's, again, someone says, I just, I've been here for 20 years, I have these patients, and I'm just really nervous about what they're going to say, then work on that. I mean, the advice that we give is like, chances are, like, it's extremely rare that a hygienist has intentionally neglected to tell their patients. They've worked around it in a lot of different ways. A lot of them have worked really hard in a prophy or perio maintenance to address the disease, but haven't actually told the patient. So look back in your chart notes. What have you talked to this patient about? Have you recommended more frequent recare? Have you recommended a Sonicare? Have you recommended more if they floss more? And if they still are showing up with chronic inflammation, then guess what? We've done the best that we can with these tools. Your body's not responding the way we had hoped. It's time to do something different. So acknowledge what's happened in the past, and just also acknowledge that if we keep letting the patient just kind of simmer in this inflammation, then it's creating a lot of risk for them in other areas of their health. This isn't just about losing teeth. I mean, that's a bad thing, but this is way bigger than that. And really just try to spin it, because likelihood is that individual has a lot of empathy for their patients. And so get them to see how not addressing this is actually not congruent with their level of empathy for these patients.
Yeah, I love that because a lot of times you hit on it. I'm certain doctors have asked you this. Well, I do that, and then they say, "Well, you're all about the money. All you care about is me producing more, and that's why you're doing this." What do you say to those doctors who, when they've tried to say this, they have that hygienist? What do you do with that?
So
What do you
I
recommend?
would say, tell me more about that. What is it that has happened in the practice that has caused you to feel that way?
And have them get more specific, you're
Yeah.
saying, on, well, I feel like you're telling me to first sell this, or because a lot of times when they start getting more specific, it has nothing to do with selling anything and everything to do with not feeling confident in a certain area. I find with hygienists,
Okay.
well, for any team member, there's a lack of confidence a lot of times in being able, like you said, to word it, or they want to save face, or there's something more. But I always say, like, money is kind of that little mask that people will wear as the panacea for everything. You want me to sell more,
Mm-hmm.
when really there's a disconnect between taking care of the patients and feeling really confident. Because I always tell people, like, if you're taking care of them well, truly, with what they need based on what we see,
Mm-hmm.
don't worry. You don't even have to think about that. I don't even talk about goals or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I agree with you when you ask them to get really specific on, help me understand what that exactly means. And I love the way you worded it was, tell me what you're seeing is happening in the practice that led you there.
Mm-hmm. And and to be fair, I mean, the things, you know, how do I say this nicely? To be to be fair, it does happen in practices where it feels like we're being asked to sell, like, okay, we're going to do this many Invisalign cases, and we're going to do this many this, we're going to do this many that. And we don't start with the why. We
Yeah.
start with the goal,
Mm-hmm.
and consultants are guilty of this too. It's like, oh, you need to hit $1,500 a day. You're almost there. If you just do 4 more fluoride treatments a day, then you're going to hit your goal. Like, that's easy. And that will work for a while. But if there's a disconnect between what we believe is valuable to the patient as a clinician, I should say in our heart, and what we intellectually know we're supposed to be presenting, it will fall away. It'll work for a little while, even if there's an incentive, it'll work for a little while and then it'll fall away until those two things are congruent. And that is really where the hard work comes in, is really, you can put together a beautiful standard of care, but if we don't really get to what is our core job for these patients that are coming here for care, like we are we have got to step into that role as healthcare practitioner and know that that doesn't just mean, you know, when they've got this pocket depth, we recommend that. No, it's looking at their medical history and saying, Ashlee, I know that you and I have had this conversation about your diabetes and that you're really have been working on controlling that. And I'm concerned because you have this active inflammation, and until this is addressed, it's going to be very difficult for you to control your diabetes. And that is about the person. It's not about selling.
Mm-hmm. And that's usually where I see the disconnect is a hygienist doesn't feel equipped for that conversation. And I say, so often they'll say, well, it feels like I'm having to sell because it feels high pressure versus high conviction. You
Yes,
just haven't had
exactly.
helped them with, what does high conviction look like? Because don't worry,
Yes,
you're not going to have to sell a thing with high conviction. And that's where I have
yes.
to sometimes figure out, you don't feel confident
Hmm.
because you don't know how
Yes.
to do this. And that's where I'm always like, that's where I would rather spend the time. And I couldn't agree with you more. Like, doctors mean well when they're setting up these arbitrary goals. And I know that,
Yep.
but I was a dental assistant before I was a doctor. I remember thinking, like, well, so we just ring the bell because we, sold whatever. Truly, I'm not kidding, by the way. And, it's like maybe we'd get there, maybe we wouldn't, but I didn't necessarily piece together any of, we're doing this because this is getting them healthier.
Uh-huh.
And this is just a number that just shows how many people we've gotten healthy. But I always feel like, in my humble opinion, and I could be mistaken, I don't even discuss any kind of number goals until I've done all of this work first.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
what's the perio protocols? What's our standard of care? Are we all convicted by the same thing? What does our full commitment look like? What's going to get in the way of us presenting it? Because a lot of times it's going to be everything you just said. We've been seeing these patients for 20 years. I've been taking care of Bob for 10 years, and now I'm going to, like, it's, I need to talk about all of that first. And then I joke, we can start to think about goals later, maybe. But what I found is often just by doing this, hygienists naturally start to produce more because they have the confidence
Mm-hmm.
to know what to diagnose and how to say it. So I think goals can be good. I just don't think ever set them. I agree with you. Don't set them necessarily first.
Yeah, I will say that it is helpful for them to see when whatever it is you've been focusing on is measurably improving,
Yes.
because otherwise they're like, is this working? Like, I don't even
Yep.
know. They're just kind of wandering around in the dark again. So it
Yeah.
is good just to say, hey guys, guess what? Like, I just thought I'd take a look and see how we're doing with our perio, our perio program. And we were averaging 20 quads a month and we did 30 last month. Like, that's a 50% improvement. That's awesome.
Yep. And I
Yeah.
think that makes sense, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think,
It's
doesn't that,
directly related. Yes.
yes. And instead of you made this much more per day,
Yes.
like, I think for me, I would not, I would be more convicted by look how many more people I truly got
Yes.
healthy. And I have confidence now because I can have those conversations and it worked
Yeah.
versus look how much more
Yep.
money got made.
Exactly.
Ashlee, anything you'd like to add to this part of the conversation?
No, just that I love it and I agree. I mean that the start with why, that we go back to that all the
Yes.
time, and it's that back to when it feels like everything is overwhelming, working on the foundations seems like such a huge like task, and such a like no, like let's just focus on putting out the fires, and when you can go back to this foundational stuff and get the understanding. I loved what you said too, Summer, around um don't worry about the selling, like worry about convening the health aspect of it. Like that's all I care about. That's what I want you to do is learn better communication around that and promoting that. I think it's just such a shift, and I think it's such a shift that people want to work for too and work
Hmm.
towards.
Yes.
It's easier
Yes.
to keep employees when they're motivated by that versus money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I think, isn't that always the person you want to follow who is so passionate and convicted to help someone else? Like, there's a sense of like, gosh, I want to follow that person who cares so much about making people healthy. Like, what does that need to look like? And if that's stopping to practice the verbiage, if that's stopping to redo the foundation, they're willing to do that. I think for me, I'm like those, to go back to the hygienists that we're all looking to attract. I mean, Rachel, I think you can say those great hygienists, they want that person who has that sense of passion and conviction around the hygiene program as well.
Yeah, because they'll support them in that. It's like, and that's a great question too. Like, what are you most passionate about in your career and what you do for patients? That's a great question. So I want to touch on just a couple things before we wrap. I had to put on my glasses to see what time it was, 'cause I don't. Um, okay, so we talked about like showing them the progress. Another great thing, just to reiterate or reinforce, is at your team meetings, if this is something that you're focusing on, like bring up the patients that are getting healthier, like share this with the team, because they don't just automatically know that, Sally's patients, when they all of a sudden they were able to go off one of their diabetes medications because their disease is now under control. Like, these things really happen in practices. You
Totally.
all have seen this,
Yeah.
or you've had a patient that the hygienist did an oral cancer screening and it turns out they had oral cancer, but they caught it early. Like, these are the things that happen regularly, but we often forget to share them with the rest of the team. So be sure and share those things, because that's motivating too. It's like, okay, this is making a difference.
Absolutely.
I also want to touch on, you said, what are the things to tolerate and not tolerate? So there certainly is room for coaching and making sure people have the tools, that they have clear expectations and all of that. Um, I will say that though, there's no room for, um, gossiping. There's no room for blatant toxic behavior or that's not my job behavior. That is not okay. And I do see this happening, and I know that I am not in a dental practice owner's position with 1,000 patients that need care. But I will say that I see this so often that dentists are tolerating really bad behavior because they're afraid that they won't be able to find somebody to replace that hygienist. And it's putting patients' health at risk. It's putting at risk your really great team members that are going to get sick and tired of this person's behavior, and you're not doing anything about it, and they're going to leave. I've seen it. And energetically, if someone's holding that space, there's not room for anybody else to come in.
Mhm.
So A, always be recruiting, always be out there looking for team members, and B, just don't, you know, and I've been the business owner that have let things go on too long. I get it. And my daughter was like, "Mom, you why don't you just fire this person? You talk about him every night when you come home." And I'm like, "Ding ding 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 ding." I'm
Yep.
like, "Yeah, yeah, okay." And that was when I made the decision. When your
From that,
kid tells you
yes.
they're tired of hearing you gripe about this person, there's your decision point.
Yep.
But yeah, I just wanted to say that, and
Yep.
it won't change unless it is stopped. And that person, and there are a few out there, and they're not just hygienists, but it won't stop until there's a consequence.
Yeah. I 1000% am with you. I hear it so often, and I've been on the other side of it too, where I let something going on way too long. And,
Yeah,
you're right. Like, you have these incredible team members who are looking
yeah,
to you for how
right.
long are you going to tolerate it? And Ashlee, you've seen it too. They're the good team members are looking at, are you going to lead or not? I always say, like, it's in my integrity at stake every time. And
Yes.
when I think about that, and I think about watching over all of the employees,
Yeah.
it's really selfish for me not to want to have that conversation and sacrifice all those people who keep coming to work with a great attitude. So
Yeah.
it's tough though. I will say sometimes you have to hold on to somebody while you're in that, interim moment, and that
Sure.
OSP
Yeah.
recruiting has been, I have done that for the last 10 years. I will always have ads out all the time. And if people say, well, what if my team sees them? I say, well, then they were looking. So
Oh,
um,
good point.
and I'm always like, I don't shy away
All the
from
more
saying,
reason.
I always say, you know what, guys, I am always looking to add incredible team members
Yeah.
just like you.
Yeah.
So, the last thing, and I don't think we need much time on it, but the question I do hear a lot is they see an unproductive hygiene team, and people will often move to, I'm going to throw at them, here's all the adjunctives you can do.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I have seen that backfire. Tell me what do you see when you're working with offices, and they're saying, read, help me with my hygiene department, help make them more
Yeah.
productive. Do you start with more perio basic foundation and then start to add the
Yes.
adjustments? Yeah.
100%. I mean, I think we really covered this in the previous conversation about when you start throwing all those things, it ends up being more of a production and a sale grab than it is a thoughtful addition of a meaningful service. So yes, start with the basics, because the other thing is, if you're going to add lasers, but you don't have a clear standard of care, or when patients are going into therapy, if they're not going into into non-surgical therapy, how are you going to add lasers? So look at the root problem. And very often it is that the basic procedures are not consistently being done. And then list all the things that interest you and pick the top one, and work with the team on implementing it, and implementing it well, and get everybody really comfortable, and then add another one. And making sure that you all see the benefit with the patients, and just take your time, because it does tend to backfire. When you just add a whole lot of things, people get confused and they feel like they're just dogpiling on patients, and it doesn't last.
Yeah. And I'm with you. It starts to become this weird like whack-a-mole game of like, now
Yeah,
we're talking hydroxyapatite, now we're talking laser,
yeah,
now we're talking Invisalign. And I'm like, we're missing the point of, you know, it's customized care
that's
for the
right.
patient. And if you're going to customize the care, then we've got to instead think about what is the cool thing for the month, and what does that patient need to get healthy?
Yeah.
Does hydroxyapatite make sense? Does fluoride make sense? Like, what is the prescription for that patient, not what's
Yes.
special of the month? And that's how I
Yes.
want to teach my hygienists to think. I always say, like, I want to make you guys think more like nurse practitioners of the mouth. Like
Yeah.
these like CSI sleuths that are figuring out, here's where you're starting, here's where optimal health is. How do I walk alongside you to get you as close to optimal health as possible? Instead of what's the special of the week? Because
Mhm.
otherwise we may be so focused on that thing of the month that we just missed some of the
Mm-hmm.
other things that are actually more important. So
Yes.
I agree with you. All foundational stuff first. And I tell people, like,
Yes.
get that so dialed in before you start throwing more things at the hygienist. Because once they have the foundation of perio health, knowing a healthy mouth cleaning versus gingivitis versus perio, and they can do that, blindfolded so easily with their verbiage, well, then we can start saying, what's the next thing we can do to get our patients closer to optimal health? And I agree, just one thing at a time and make sure
Yeah.
it's consistent.
Yeah. The other thing I will say too that may not affect hygiene production directly, but it impacts practice production is also helping your hygienist become more effective with restorative co-diagnosis. And that is another huge piece to focus on. And really what we do is I feel like more than anything is help hygienists and team members like think critically, like just think differently. So that's just another thing, and we could do a whole nother session on that, developing those diagnostic partners, but that's another thing that is really impactful on the whole practice.
Oh, it is huge. And you're right. That's a whole nother area of
Yeah.
development. And I always say, and it takes no additional resources
Right.
except for time.
Yep.
And that's what sometimes doctors don't want is they want to have the quick panacea that can fix it. And I'm always like, I've learned over almost 25 years of this, like I was always, my time was better spent building the people's
Yes.
confidence in their skills and their ability to have these conversations and navigate them. Like that time was better spent than any adjunctive I
Yeah.
ever added.
Yeah.
um, so Ashlee, anything though with that point and adding more and more and more stuff to people's plate?
I mean, all I just heard again was it's back to the foundations, right? So if the goal is the health, like what's the adjunct that complements the needs of the
Yes.
patient, not just add these six things, and if we just get four more, then we're
Yeah.
proper, whatever it is, like if you're focused on the health of the patient and what steps they need, that's what I heard. So just to reiterate,
Yeah. Well, and
foundations.
it's, I know, and it's always the thing we want to get away from, right? I want
Yeah.
the cool
Yeah.
fancy things. So, I think to wrap it all up, well, first, thank you, Rachel. It's just always such a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely.
And like I said, I just soul sister of hygiene. I'm like, I love it. Um, but I think we talked about, when it comes to hiring in this current climate, we might need to think different to attract the hygienists
Yeah.
that do have the passion. So we talked a little bit about the ads we place, where we're placing them, who we're talking to. Always be looking for new people to potentially add. We talked through how do you start the conversation to raise the standards. We kind of walked through what to do when you're first introducing it and know that you might have to go slow before it ever starts to go faster. Giving more of a time and increment meetings set up, walking alongside them, establishing new habits. We talked about what behaviors to tolerate and maybe when to say this just isn't in alignment with what we're trying to do. And you would be better served in the practice as well. We talked about that. And we talked about, when do you add adjunctive things to their plate and when maybe we just need to keep focusing on the basic foundations.
Yeah.
Anything else as I wrap up, ladies?
That's a lot. I think we covered a lot.
We did it, and we did it in the hour. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. I'm certain we will be having you back as I create the 2026 agenda.
I'd love that.
So I will shoot you an email soon to kind of get you back on the schedule. But thank you both, Ashlee. Thank you always for adding such value to what you get to hear in conversations and reiterating what you find important as well. So we will see you guys back next month, and thank you guys again. Have a good one.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
all.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.